Hey, welcome to my Warframes Where They Are Now series, a little series I've had brewing in the back of my mind since the early days of Warframe, quote unquote. I'm going to put this little intro at the beginning of every video in this series. If you've heard this once or more, feel free to skip it. This is just my opinion and is not guaranteed to be fact. Remember, with Warframe, everyone plays at least a little different from each other. That's why there's 52 frames as of making this intro, of course. That being said, I do plan on being as objective as I can with this series. But bias will always be a potential problem and will definitely shine through in certain episodes, if not all. Now, that being said, I hope you enjoy the series. July 20th, 2023. Today we're going to talk about Oberon, the plant guy who is also radioactive. I always found that kind of odd. Base stats on an Oberon Prime at level 30 are 225 armor, 263 energy, 375 health, 300 shields, and 1 sprint speed. Oberon's passive is, allied pets receive 25% health link, armor link, and shield link from Oberon. In addition, your pet receives an instant revive permission. I didn't know this until actually today, but that actually does come in handy, and it also explains why Thade tends to survive longer with Oberon. Thade's my full pilot. Oberon's first ability focuses deadly energy in an enemy and then spreads it to enemies nearby with homing ability. It's definitely an interesting first ability. It's definitely not the strongest, but it's definitely not the weakest either. I like it, but I also don't use it very often and have considered helmeting it off multiple times, and probably will at some point. I just don't know what to replace it with yet. As for the augment's might infusion, hold the cast will grant allies within 50 meters an additional radiation damage to their weapons for a good duration. It's part of a series of augments that do this with the first ability, like Siren has one that does it with corrosive, Volt has one that does it with electricity, etc., etc. It depends on the elements as to whether it's useful or not, as well as what you're doing. I will say, Smite Infusion definitely would be good for, like, Eidolons. Like, definitely. But either way, yeah, it's not bad, but definitely not something I would squeeze in for anything other than, like, Eidolons or whatever. As for his second, Hallowed Ground, he plants a bunch of weed in front of him, and enemies are dealt radiation damage as they walk through it. And one thing that is seldom talked about is it does actually negate status effects to those allies that are standing within it. Granted, not all of them. You will get hit by Eximus abilities, but you also won't get knocked on your ass from, like, I forget what they're called, but the Grineer units that try to knock you down. But, yeah, no, I mainly use it to, like, put it in front of, mobile defense targets and whatever. Keep them safe. It's not perfect, but it works. As for the augment, Hallowed Eruption, you can reactivate to deal the all remaining damage and radiation status, and it also increases the duration of the ability. I'll be honest, I'd probably throw it on there for the duration increase, because most of the missions I use Oberon for, I'm staying in one spot anyway. As for his third, Renewal, it has an initial wave of healing, and then it just, gradually heals everybody that's within it. It drains per person that's affected by it. I will say the one thing that sucks is if you're playing with a Necros, you will rip through your energy crazy fast using this, because guess what? It counts the Shadows of the Dead as heal targets. Fun. As for the augment, Phoenix Renewal, taking fatal damage while under the effects of Renewal will instead heal you or allies by a percentage of health, and this effect triggers only once for each ally every 90 seconds. It's nice. I will say I don't run it simply because, I run Yaneru, and I have Blast Gas, not to mention, because of the introduction of the Tenno, there's not a lot of reason to run this anymore, because all you have to do is, go invisible as your Tenno and bring them back while you're invisible. It is cool, though. And I do have friends that do use it, apparently, although most of them haven't even gotten to the second dream yet, the ones that run it anyway. But I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you guys have a build that you use this for that has some sort of wacky shenanigans, because I see it going up in the trade chat a lot. As for his fourth ability, Reckoning, He lifts the enemies off the ground and slams them back into it. Deals a decent amount of damage, and it also strips armor. I will say the damage does scale off pretty bad the higher you go in levels, but the armor strip is always nice. Editing scenario on here, something I failed to mention is the enemies need to be standing in your hollowed ground in order to be affected by the armor strip. Which, weird choice if you ask me, but hey. It works, and honestly, the nice thing is it does immediately make your grasp more effective, so... trade-offs, I guess? I don't know. Apparently anything that dies to it also has a chance to drop a health orb, which is nice, but... I don't really kill a lot of things with it because I tend to use Oberon for higher end content. As for the augment, Hollowed Reckoning, gains a 40% range, a 3-meter radius around each affected enemy, grants a bonus armor to allies, and deals 300 damage per second to enemies. I honestly want to tinker with this to find out how well it works. I think it's great, but I also don't know because I've never used it. As for my build, I run... Well, the only reason I'm running Steel Charge is because I haven't had the patience to reformat that slot for corrosive projection. But aside from that, I run mostly strength with a bit of duration and just, flat range and negative efficiency. So how's this frame fare for Deviri? Well, as per usual, with regular Deviri content, he's good. I mean, again, I don't think there's a frame that isn't for that. As for the Steel Path content, he's also pretty good. He's definitely not the best frame you can get, but he does fare pretty well. The renewal will keep your ass alive, as well as any allies you have with you. The Reckoning is good for the armor strip, and of course you have Hollowed Ground to surround the excavators when you have to deal with the excavation one. Frankly, I find that one to be the most annoying. Because it's not particularly difficult, it just takes way longer than it probably should. Oberon is a frame I actually quite enjoy. I always found it funny that his abilities do radiation damage because he's the plant guy. But it's similar to the Ureli situation where she does ice damage because, well, what else would she do? There isn't really a water damage. So in that regard, I understand, but I always found that kind of funny looking at it. I do like that, he has a relatively wide area of coverage, which is always a good thing to have when it comes to a Warframe. And, overall, yeah, no, he's just fun to play. Well, actually, for specific missions I use him for, I typically use him for mobile defense as previously stated, as well as regular defense. Basically anything that I can drop the grass around and just keep safe. As for the Steel Path side of things, I typically use him for his 4 and 3, whereas the lower missions I use him for his 1 and 3. Or not 1 and 3, 2 and 3, sorry. But anyway, that's it. And that's all. Thank you all for watching and have a good one.